This is the TRU Leader Podcast. Today, our special guest is Christy Pretzinger, a freelance writer turned CEO who thrives on helping people grow professionally and creating great places to work. Don't miss it.
Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christofferson.
And I'm Michelle Trosett.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started. Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. I am Michelle, and I'm here with co-host Tracy.
Yes. TC.
TC. Yeah. People don't call me MT. It's like they call you TC.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've been called a lot of things. TC's one of the better ones.
I remember this just quick flashback. When I worked at the hospital, we'd be doing assignments. I came in one day and they had all these patients' beds and they had MT on a lot of them. And my heart dropped. I thought I had all the patients in the assignment. They're like, no, it means empty bed. That was kind of good. But then it was kind of like, oh, my initials mean empty.
Oh, yeah, really. I had the opposite. I came in and I was assigned to almost every patient. I had every patient on the floor.
Oh, my goodness.
Because we were so loaded in the ICU. Almost all the staff had to be in the ICUs. And I had every patient on every floor. And we're not talking 2 floors, folks. We're talking like 8 floors. Every respiratory patient, I had them all. I had to triage and just see the Q2s. And oh, yeah. I was, that was like, are you kidding me? I'm calling in sick. No. But, hey, we move through those little episodes and learn a lot. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Look at us today.
Yeah.
Who knew?
We're not empty. We don't got a full floor assignment. We're rising up.
We are. And we're meeting other wonderful entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. We are. Christy was a wonderful guest today.
She was.
Really nice conversation with her and just really love her spirit and her determination.
Mm-hmm.
She's very determined to build a business on kindness.
Yeah. And culture is really important to her, as it is with us as well.
A lot of synergies. Yeah, really, really great interview. So let me just tell you a little bit about Christy Pretzinger, and then you can listen to this great interview. So Christy transformed the landscape of healthcare content creation, and along the way, transformed what it's like to work at a growing agency. As the owner and CEO of WG Content, Christy has established an industry-leading company that delivers superior content and strategy to healthcare brands nationwide. How did she do it? She intentionally focused on building the business based on kindness. And that approach has proven to be good for people and the bottom line. Over time, Christy discovered her true calling to create a workplace that nurtures personal and professional growth and help other leaders do the same. She's a popular guest speaker for events and podcasts, always ready to guide audiences on how to grow leaders and build inclusive workplaces. She's been featured on numerous podcasts, including From Founder to CEO, Her $1 Million Mystery, Lead Like a Woman, and Smart Business Revolution. See for yourself how Christy is reinventing how businesses evaluate effective leadership, how employees can contribute to success, and how everyone can win if you start with kindness. So without further ado, here is our interview with Christy Pretzinger.
Well, hello, Christy. Welcome to the TRU Leader Podcast. We're looking very forward to our conversation with you today.
Well, thank you so much, Michelle and Tracy, for having me. I'm looking forward to it too.
Yeah. It's going to be fun.
It is. We can already tell.
Yeah.
So let's get started. Well, as the owner of WG Content, tell our listeners about your journey from a freelancer to CEO of your own company.
Gosh, it seems so long ago. I started freelancing a long time ago, like back in 1993, and I did that for about 10 years. And then I started building Writer Girl. And what happened was that I always say, I quote the Oracle of Oprah, luck is preparation meeting opportunity. And I had a client ask me to bring a team of writers to a large project. And that went really well. And I thought, oh, that's what I should do. And then fast forward a few months, a former client had moved to a hospital system in a neighboring town. And they had 3 websites that they were launching concurrently. And she asked me to bring a team of writers to that. So after that, I told myself the entrepreneur's necessary lie, which is, it'll be easy to just bring teams of writers to hospitals. So I started looking into that, and that was probably around 2007 or so, right around there, that I really started focusing on first with hospitals, and then now we work across the whole healthcare ecosphere.
Wow. Yeah. How hard could that be?
Right.
To be an entrepreneur. I mean,
right?
Just hang out your shingle and go for it. Right?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And all the work just comes right to you.
Oh, yeah.
Easy peasy.
I know. You're just sitting on the couch eating bonbons, right? While everybody's running around writing.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well,
that's a very short nutshell.
Wow. That's a great capture of that journey. And but we also know that you really are about creating thriving work cultures and really helping people, right, to be their best selves. And so tell us a little bit about what have been your greatest lessons when it comes to growing people inside an organization now that you've got this group of writers. Tell us a little bit about
it's interesting.
what you've learned.
Well, because when I started building the business way back, pardon me, I told my accountant at the time that if I couldn't build a business based on kindness, I would go back to being a freelancer. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really sure why that was the impetus, except that it's important to me. And I guess I felt like I had worked in environments that weren't kind. The people were not unkind, but the structures within which they worked didn't foster kindness. So I said that, and I knew it was an intention, but as anyone who's ever built a business, I'm sure you two know, you just kind of you put your head down and you're wearing all the hats, doing all the things. And I wasn't really thinking about that a lot. But that was always something that was important to me as a person. So obviously that came out when I hired people, the way I treat people, all of that. So then about 5 years ago, we were working with some consultants, and the first thing they did was they asked all of the employees, what's the most important thing about the company? And what is the thing without which the company would not exist? And it turned out that it was the culture. So I was able to be like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I hearkened back to that comment all those years ago. And I thought about all of the lessons I've learned over the years about growing first myself, right? Personal development and self-awareness are key to that. Mm-hmm. You always have to start there. And then expanding that outward to understand other people, and also to give them access to tools and techniques and different kinds of things that help them become more self-aware. Because as they become more self-aware, obviously, then it makes for a richer, better environment. So one of the things that I've learned over the years, probably about, I guess it was about maybe 15 years ago, I was introduced to a personality typing system called the Enneagram. Mm. And I mean, there's a lot of systems out there, and I recommend that people find one that works for them. The reason this one worked for me personally, and then we use it within the organization too, is because it's not just about behaviors, it's about motivation for behaviors. So we type everyone who joins the organization, and then we do lunch and learns and someday a full day workshop, different kinds of things all around the Enneagram. Because what I've learned through that, and this goes back to how you grow people, is that the first thing, again, back to self-awareness, when you learn about your type, you obviously see a lot of things, it's your type if when you read about it, you're like, oh, ick, I really don't like that. That's so me, because there's aspects of ourselves, right, that really are not, we probably rather prefer to keep hidden. But the nice thing about it is through that system, you start to recognize your strengths and your opportunities, shall we say. And then because there's really essentially, I'm kind of boiling it down, but there's basically 9 types. When you learn about the other ones, and you understand the people that you're working with and like, oh, that person is this type on the Enneagram and therefore their motivation is this. What that does is it lays the ground for radical empathy. And so what happens then is that all of the employees, because we've focused on this and done, again, full day workshops and lunch and learns and things, so people understand the language of it. And it allows them to understand that when someone is behaving a certain way, they're not doing it to be annoying. Mm-hmm. They're doing it because that's their motivation for that behavior is whatever it happens to be. So that, again, I think that what I always kind of say, I'm sneaking in a little bit of therapy with the Enneagram because it's such inner work. But when you do the inner work, in my experience, then you find that the outer work becomes mm-hmm. richer and just a better environment for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. I was thinking about what you said too about just, I'm not going to build this business unless I can build it on kindness, and just thinking about the role of values, right? And so many organizations have a list of values, but they're not like deeply ingrained into the people that are, leading the organization. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're just words on a plaque on the wall, Yes. And I think that's one of the things that, we look at our values every quarter, right? Mm-hmm. Like we're always like evaluating, are these things changing? Have we evolved? Do we need to, how are we living them? And then integrated them into, values come in pairs. So oftentimes it's not just one value, but more that like mission and margin as an example in an organization, right? You need to serve the mission of your company, but you also need to have margin. So just as an example, but
yeah,
you just have to really feel them and want to live them, right? To make them really drive your company forward. I think I really appreciate what you said.
Our values are a core to us, and mm-hmm. we're empowered, curious, kind, and fun. And we actually, what I frequently say is that we engineer the processes and structure to allow for the magic of the weaving of the tapestry. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to values, one of the things that in my experience has proven true is that your values shouldn't change, but the expression of those values might change. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to be an organization that every couple of years changes your values, because then nobody can really, really hold on to them and live them. Mm-hmm. So our values haven't changed, but sometimes the expression of them changes a little bit. Mm-hmm. But what I say is that the values remain constant. And in our organization, they're a thread that runs throughout our entire organization, everything we do, and upon which all decisions can hang. So mm-hmm. we actually engineer one of our team. We have a team meeting, an all hands meeting once a month. And what we do is we have something, we call it the Woohoo Cup. We used to actually have a cup, but now we give a gift card. And what our HR coordinator does is she will say, okay, the value this month is empowered. So she sends out, communication and says, who wants to nominate, a coworker for demonstrating empowerment? And that's another thing I learned, obviously being a word person, but that we don't say, how have you felt empowered? How have you demonstrated empowerment? Because that way it's not like, well, nobody made me feel empowered. It's like, oh, what did I do that really showed that I'm empowered? And that kind of puts a different headspace in it. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Michelle, it keeps it top of mind for everyone, because they're talking about it once a month. And the great thing about it too is that when you nominate someone, you have an opportunity to demonstrate kindness because you're recognizing one of your coworkers for something that they've done, whatever value we're happening to be recognizing that month.
Yeah. I love that. And I love how we recognize a lot of leaders learn different tools like Strength Finders, Enneagram, DISC, but it's a whole other thing to really intentionally incorporate it into your culture and continually learn more about it. And so I think I just really applaud you for doing that, because there's a lot to the Enneagram, and the more you learn together and the more you keep it in front of you, I think it just becomes more. You just have a better appreciation for people's differences as well as your own. Like you said, it really starts with you. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, we've people really enjoy it. They like it, and they're always surprised because they learn that their behaviors may look similar to somebody else's, but why you behave that way is vastly different. And that's interesting, kind of like a little puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. Well, we love how you also have applied emotional intelligence as a both and. Tracy and I are all about the both and not the either or. And you really have advocated that it's really important to have strong organizational emotional intelligence as well as individual emotional intelligence. So tell us a little bit about that, about the team and the individual when it comes to emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I read an article, came across this a while back, a few years ago, in Harvard Business Review, but it's an old article. It's from like 2003, and I'll be happy to share the link so you can put it in your show notes if you'd like. It was about Team EQ. I don't remember the title, but in any case, it's very different. Individual EQ or EI, whichever you want to call it, is very different than team EQ, because obviously you kind of let go of the I and it turns into a we. And the other thing about like the team EQ is also, I can reference Simon Sinek and the circle of safety that he talks about, that if you put we at the middle, it takes care of me as well as you. So there's a lot of that goes on. And so one of the things that I try to demonstrate, to model for other people is if we're in a meeting, and someone, I think this was an example actually from the article, but it's like, for example, if there's a meeting and it's early in the morning, like for us, because we're virtual, so getting into a place sometimes locally can be challenging because we don't do that all the time. Right. And let's say that we're starting it at 8:30, and one of the employees has 5 kids that she has to get off to 5 different places, and yet she still gets there, but she might be a few minutes late. And so instead of being all judgy about that, what I, as a leader, would say is, I really appreciate you getting here. I know that's not easy for you, and we're happy that you're here because your point of view and your perspective really adds a lot to what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. So it kind of sets the tone for everybody else so there's no blaming, shaming, anything like that going on. Instead, it's an appreciation of the fact. And if you're a little bit late, that's okay. We're just really happy that you're here. Mm-hmm. So we never want to err on the side of rigidity over kindness, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just a very simple way of looking at that. But really, that's another one that I think with all of these things, I always say that whatever you're doing, if it's your values or your mission, or you're trying to focus on fostering relationships, that it all needs to be done with intention and attention. Mm-hmm. Because you can have an intention, but if you don't pay any attention to it, then it's really easy to forget about it. And so, same thing with like building trust. That's such a long game, right? I mean, it takes forever to build really deep trust. And yet you can lose it so quickly if you're not paying attention, So that's kind of something that I talk about a lot, is both intention and attention when it comes to things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's another polarity.
Yes.
The world is full of them.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really wise. So the other thing is that, you're a fellow entrepreneur like us, right? And, we know there's no such thing as failures, right? Just lessons, lots of lessons.
Every day.
Lots of lessons, yeah.
So maybe share with our listeners 1 or 2, what some people call failing forwards that you've experienced in your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh gosh, only 2. There are just
we'll start there, and then I'm sure we can probably add a few to that.
Right. So many from which to choose.
Oh, yeah.
I would say one of the big ones that, and this is really more, it's business and personal actually, but I studied French in college. I didn't have business major. I didn't have any of that kind of stuff. I didn't have the language of business, meaning more like accounting and finance and stuff.
Right.
I understood it, but not as deeply as I should have, because what happened is that, so what I recommend to all entrepreneurs is understand accounting language, really know what you're talking about and know what system of accounting works best for you. Because in a nutshell, the way that our business works is we tend to collect a lot of cash up front, which is lovely, but then we have to work it off. So, I mean, it doesn't belong to us, right? We owe it to someone. It's a debit, right? Something that we owe. So when I was married, when I first started building the business, and then when I got divorced, I paid spousal support. And I paid spousal support based on that cash basis accounting, which means, let's say that we'd collect $500,000 from someone, but we'd only get to keep, I'm making this up, 300,000 of it. But on my tax return, which is what it looked like I had that $500,000, and I paid spousal support based on cash as opposed to actual income. So that is, too deep to go into much here, but just for anybody who's building a business, be very familiar with your accounting terms and what's best practices for you, because that was a big one. Something a little more personal that I learned was that I sometimes thought that if someone was being like passive aggressive or rude to me, I just assumed it was just me. And what I learned is however they're treating me is how they're probably treating the client. And I had a situation where I had a contractor who was working with me very closely. This was many years ago. It was probably about 2009, I think. And she was working with a large client. And I didn't know that this was happening. I got along great. In fact, we still work with this client. I got along great with the client contact, but I wasn't in the weeds on it. She was doing the project management of it. I was not doing that. And apparently what happened, I went up there to have a meeting. I met with a client that I know and like. We're talking, having a great time. It's like, how are your kids? That kind of thing. Then I go into this conference room, and the PM was not there with me, by the way. It was just me in this room. But the project manager on the client side was there, and she was almost shaking. She was so angry. And I was like, what is going on here? And the tone from my client changed too. And it was like my person was being incredibly passive aggressive with the client. And, we all know this. If you have a client, you're in the service industry, there are all sorts of constraints and things that happen, and they miss deadlines and things are miscommunicated. But that's just the way it goes. You still got to keep moving forward, right? Well, what happened on my end is that the woman was like, well, you're missing your deadline. I'm not going to do it. Meanwhile, there was a launch date for this website that was immovable, and she just was stopping everything. I had no idea. I couldn't believe it. So that was a big lesson to realize, like, okay, if somebody is behaving badly with me, they're behaving badly with my client. I can only assume they're behaving badly with my client. That was a really big lesson. And it really, as a woman, I don't know if this happens with men. I can't speak to that. But I know as a woman, and with friends of mine and other people and even employees and stuff, that I think sometimes we struggle with our worth. And so struggling with my worth was where I was thinking, oh, she's just being rude to me. She wouldn't do that with somebody else. It kind of taking it on myself instead of being like, you don't act that way with me or with anybody, and putting my foot down about that. That was a really big lesson for me to just know my worth. That's a huge one. That's a lifetime lesson, right? You got to keep working on that. But to understand that if someone is behaving badly towards me, they're probably behaving badly, and you don't want them around. Yeah.
Well, and it too is when it comes to creating healthy cultures and cultures that foster the kind of values that you're interested in, right? You really, you have to have that. You have to have kind of those guidelines around healthy relationships to really, right? Like, this is who we are and how we are with each other, and kind of set some guardrails for the things that are acceptable or not acceptable. And it's not about judgment as much as it is about, this is the kind of culture and the kind of relationships we want to foster internally and externally, right? And so it really becomes about that. It's about that behavior that the way that you want to be with your clients, right? And having people to really
well, and also with each other,
that.
you know,
Yeah.
to your point, one of the things
internal and external.
we talk a lot about the importance of boundaries, you know, good fences make good neighbors. And so within our organization, one of the things that I stress is that the only assumption you're allowed to make about your coworker is that they have good intentions. That's the only one. And other than that, don't assume anything. And then and also when it comes to clients is right at the beginning, when you first start working with someone, the importance of asking permission and getting agreement on how we're going to work together. Like if we have a West Coast client and we're East Coast time, saying, you know, generally speaking, our work day ends at 5:30 East Coast time. Obviously, if there's an emergency, we are responsive, but that's not our habitual practice. Is I'm asking for your permission to stick to that. You get buy-in with that. And those boundaries right there stop the passive aggressive behavior where someone is going, yeah, fine, I'll do it. It's okay. And it's the furthest thing from okay, you know, and that can start leading to burnout within your organization and passive aggressive behavior with coworkers and with clients. And it's just all the bad things that nobody who runs a business wants anywhere near their organization.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's energy draining, right? To have to deal with those kinds of relationships and behaviors in the environment. And so it is, and it takes me back to another player to candor and diplomacy, right? So there's a part of that is about having that kind of open communication, being candid about those things and respectful at the same time, right? And and managing that in that way. And everybody has had situations, you know, where they've had to kind of manage something like that. So it can be really challenging.
We always say, you know, set boundaries, but do it within, you know, the confines of our values. So do it in a kind manner. You know, you can kindly set boundaries. You don't have to be mean about it. There's, you know.
Right.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, personal and organizational, right? Boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I know, you know, you've got a book coming out, don't you?
I do. It's called Your Cultural Balance Sheet, Keys to Creating an Environment Where People Can Thrive.
Yeah, that is wonderful. And that's going to be coming out in November.
It is coming out in November, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Awesome. Do you want to say a few words about it?
Sure. It was funny because I can tell the origin story. It's kind of interesting. I was having dinner with some other business owners, and several people that I know have had successful exits from their businesses, meaning they've sold them or, you know, whatever they've done. And we were talking about that. And obviously, if you are building your business to sell it in some way, you're very concerned about your balance sheet. You're very concerned about your net income. You're very concerned about profit and loss. And anyone who owns a business, obviously, as you say, you know, you have to have margin. I mean, that obviously you look at that. But we were talking and I said, you know, of course I look at my balance sheet. It's important that I do that. But it's almost like I look at my business through the lens of a cultural balance sheet. And I was like, oh, that's a book. Because what I realized is that for me, and I've seen this contribute to the bottom line greatly. Now, once again, I'm the only shareholder in my business, so I'm not accountable to somebody else for them telling me what the margin should be and things like that. So I get to make those decisions. And in my case, I tend to lean more into the culture as opposed to the margin. Now, obviously, we have to have margin, and we do, and that's good. But when I look at things in our organization, in fact, as a good example today, we were just talking about raises and things like that. And my apologies.
No worries.
And one of the things,
life happens.
Lots of dogs in my house. One of the things that I was thinking about as we're looking at raises is like how, like when we're talking about individual people, like, well, how will they look at that? You know, is this going to be something like, is it going to affect their joy in their job? Is it going to, you know, if they don't get as much as they got last year, are we going to be able to talk about why? And, you know, all those things. So I'm always looking at that. And we made a huge investment in our tech stack. We use Salesforce, and it's a very big 6-figure investment. And it was really, there were tears, people doing this, just like, you know, getting used to it and stuff. We've always used it, but it was a new way of doing it. And I remember asking, one of the questions I would always ask, like at the leadership team we're talking about it, is, did we come up with a technical solution, a tech solution for a relationship business? And is it affecting the joy in people's lives? Or is it just a moment in time? You know, I don't pretend to have all the answers. I ask the question, and I'm usually asking the question about the culture, because that's my legacy. I mean, I think that having the privilege of being able to feed into the lives of people is one of the greatest privileges in the world. And this culture that I have cast the vision for, and that the employees live out every day, is the best thing I've ever done, other than my son. And if I were to sell this business and that culture were to go away, I would be devastated. That would be a huge failure in my life. So it's, vastly important to me. Yeah. And I want other people to think the same thing, to feel the privilege of leading people, because it is a privilege.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, culture work is sometimes, it's the hardest work to do, because it's behavior, it's things that are sometimes intangible. And so I think having a, what did you call it? A blueprint?
Balance sheet.
Culture
balance sheet.
A balance. You call it a balance sheet.
The culture
to
balance
really
sheet.
help others look at it from that perspective too, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And helping them see that it really is, it's important, it's revenue generating or profit generating. It definitely contributes to your bottom line. But more than that, it's also, have you guys ever heard the term the helper's high? When you help other people, that you get more out of it almost than the person you're helping does. And this is a little bit different, but I do feel that way when people say things about how much they love working here. Or I had one employee say, I've never worked somewhere where the job made me a better person too, in addition to learning about things. And I'm like, oh, that is just like, almost brings tears to my eyes, because it's just a wonderful thing to be able to enrich the lives of other people.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of goes all the way back to, kind of the beginning conversations too, right? Around how you grow people in your organization. And it's not just about growing their skills to serve the outcomes of the business, but helping them to grow personally and evolve in that way as a human being and as a team member, and all those other ways too, right? So it does build that culture over time. So, we'll look forward to reading that book when it comes out. Maybe we'll have you back.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you back.
That would be fun. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, well, now we're ready for our mystery questions.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
So we do this, Christy, so people can get to know the true you. And the first one, speaking about books, it's a book question. What is the last really good book that you have read? Could be fiction or nonfiction, but it was just like a really good book, the kind you tell people about.
Oh, gosh. I am an avid reader. All the books behind me. I love to read. And I would say there's been a few. Of course, The Covenant of Water. That was one of Oprah's book picks. I think it was last summer. It's huge. I loved that book.
Okay.
Loved it. I thought it was great. Then there was another one that was obviously very deep, long familial story with all sorts of things happening. There was another one that I read that surprised me. I got it out of the library just because it looked interesting. It was called Going Zero, I think is what it was. It was kind of a mystery, and it was about people trying to go totally off the grid. And this one company had developed some software saying they could find anybody that went off the grid under the auspices of stopping terrorism, but really it became horribly invasive into people's lives. And so they got like 10 contestants or something, sort of like a reality show, to see if they could go zero. And then just kind of what happened about that. It was very surprising, really well written, like not just a page turner, but like complex sentence structure that was really good, and like, wow, that's interesting. That was a good one too.
Great for those tips. Great for those tips.
Yeah, love it. All right, now here we go. Last question. Question number 2. Hate to tell you this, or maybe you're going to be loving this, but we're coming to your house for dinner tonight.
I won't be here.
What most likely will be on the menu? And we don't have any allergies. We don't have any allergies.
Okay, no allergies.
No allergies.
I love to cook, actually. I do love to cook. And a lot of times when people come for dinner, I'll just, marinate something and cook it on the grill in the summertime. But I also make a really good lemon chicken that whenever people have that, they're like, oh my gosh. And it's kind of I kind of like to make up recipes. Like I start with something and then adapt it for my own self. And so I would either probably do lemon chicken or I just had people over and we made flank steak on the grill with like baked potatoes and broccoli. Very basic because it was summer.
Oh, we love those summer meals.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
We do.
Grill every chance we can get.
Lemon chicken.
Absolutely.
And a lemon drop martini for Tracy.
Yeah, there we go.
There you go. A lemon drop martini. There you go.
I have one of those. I'm on my way.
Yes, you are. You're going to be drinking lots of lemon drop martinis this week.
Yeah, vacation's coming.
Yes.
Oh, well, this has just been really great.
Yeah.
This has been a wonderful time talking with you and learning a little bit more about your experiences in entrepreneurship and leadership and the great work that you're doing in your company and help others do as well. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it. I appreciate the thoughtful questions.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
You're welcome.
How do our listeners find you, Christy?
They can go to wgcontent.com, and I'm right there very easily about our team. And then if they go there, then they can also find my LinkedIn profile because I'm there. And I'm not active on other social media, just on LinkedIn, really. So everything they would need to know, and they can get my phone numbers right there. Really, all you have to do is Google me, and I'm way too easy to find. I can't hide out.
That's all right.
You're not going zero, huh?
Don't think you need to.
Yeah, no going zero for me. Yeah.
Well, it's been wonderful. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And we hope that you got a lot of value out of our conversation with Christy. And if you did, please share it with others. That's how we grow the podcast and we spread the word and help leaders grow and evolve and make changes in cultures and organizations, right? And, leave a review as well, because we always love to hear the good news about how much you enjoy the podcast. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe on your favorite podcast channel. Or if you like watching us on YouTube, our video production, you can also subscribe on our YouTube channel. And leave us any comments about maybe one of the key takeaways you had from today's conversation with Christy. And until next time, stay safe and stay healthy.